small wind turbine versus the locally made Hugh Pigott style wind turbine.
What do you mean by a direct comparison?
Just
in terms of what?
Cost, but also probably not just cost, but like the benefits for the community and things like that. Social benefits.
It's not quite that easy, but yes, there has been, and there is every day. Every day I go onto the market and I sell our wind turbines. And every other manufacturer in the world goes onto the market and sells their wind turbines. And we compete like cats and dogs out there for sales. And that's why there's only half a dozen viable commercial small wind turbine manufacturers in the world. Everybody else is sub-economic. It's as simple as that. Only those who are making about 1,000 turbines a year are genuinely economic, in my opinion.
Just to respond, it's tricky to make direct comparisons because one is very maybe money-minded and the other one has indirect benefits that you can't measure, such as community benefits, social. Schumacher talked a lot about having like 3 bottom lines, not just economic but social and environmental, and those are benefits that can't directly be benefited, but obviously the Hugh Pigott model caters much more for that. It's much more for the social benefits, and it keeps the money in the community, in the country. It's not going from the developing countries to the west.
That's not necessarily relevant.
Yeah.
There's a moral equivalence. There's a community in the manufacturing nation that is just as important as the community in the buying nation.
Yeah. You are part of an important community, but the question was to do with whether wind's important in developing countries, and that should be the focus of the benefits.
All very fair points, I think. Let's have another few comments then. Did you have?
Yeah.
You have one, and then this gentleman here.
Hi there. Yeah. My comment is that I'm surprised that there seems to be a conflict between the two things, whereas I would see it as, you know, it's all the kind of same technology. You've all shared obviously the same aims, and I'm wondering what steps people can take such that the kind of home build, more Hugh Pigott style model and the build kind of at a factory scale can collaborate more or be, you know, more pushing in the same direction rather than having a kind of competition vibe about it. That's my question.
I'd like to take one more comment, and I think I'll give everybody a chance to make a final statement, since we're more or less at the end.
Hi, I'm interested in going out to Africa and doing alternative technology, so I'm very interested in the Pigott turbine. But there seems to be a problem with the blades, so I'm wondering if I can nick your technology for your blades so that I can do more good out there.
Okay, that's a fair point. So keep a note of that, please. I'd like another couple of comments, if there are any, then we'll have some final statements. Nicola?
Mine's more of an observation that surely there is a role for both types of technology, because if the IEA have got a commitment to get energy access for all by 2030, there's 1.4 million people still, billion people, sorry. How are we going to do that? Surely both technologies can have a role in playing their part.
Okay, so that's an argument which I'd like the panel to have a think about. Are these mutually exclusive as options, or is there a way that they can work together? Any other last observations? Yeah?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just want to, there was a comment before just about kind of wind versus solar, and I'm just wondering whether how much more wind can develop compared to how much more solar can develop, because I've heard about, you know, the sort of second, third, fourth generation solar development that's in the pipeline, sort of organic solar that's actually made sort of from living material, and it feels like there's a huge amount that solar can develop in the future, and is it possible that wind in the sort of medium to long term will be able to actually keep up with this, keep up with solar?
Okay, thanks very much. So we've got a few points there about the ways in which these different technologies might coexist, and about swapping bits between each, and about the potential for the technologies to develop. How much more is there in it? So I'd like to ask each panellist to give a final sort of statement, I guess, on some of those questions, and whether they been convinced, or how they would put the final word on this. And I'll do that in the reverse order of the original statement. So if David Howie could go first.
So I guess just a few thoughts. I personally think there is room for both of the approaches. I realise this debate has become slightly polarised, and I feel a little bit responsible for kicking some of that off. But it is a discussion, it is a debate. So personally, I think there's room for both approaches, and there's benefits in both approaches. But going back to what you were saying, if you really want scale, if you want to achieve billions of people getting access to energy, then you have to use the resources you've got in the best possible way to do that. Because if you do that inefficiently, then you're going to need 4 times as many resources, right? So I do think that quality and efficiency is important, right? But maybe the way that we can sort of meet the two approaches in the middle is to say, well, actually, a wind turbine requires good design, it requires correct blade shapes, it requires certain things to be robust and well made, and it needs a good generator, and that needs design. So maybe there's an engineering educational aspect here, bringing in my EWB hat, that is really important, because if you try and design a wind turbine and make it and you get the blade shape wrong, and your generator's all wrong and everything's in the wrong place, it's going to be rubbish. So maybe that's where we can sort of meet in the middle and say, well, both approaches are going to keep coexisting. People are going to build their own turbines, companies are going to build turbines, but maybe we can improve the quality of the homebrew stuff.
Okay, thanks very much, David. Aaron?
Yeah, great. Really interesting to hear the opposite end of the spectrum to where I'm at, and see that there is definitely, as I think we've agreed, that there's space for both. I'm going to continue teaching people how to build wind turbines. I really see the future as more decentralised and community-led solutions, and with people and communities interacting with technology on a much more hands-on basis. And I think that's quite important, and that's going to be my view.
This is an intermediate technology conference, and so okay, it's a Schumacher thing, but I mean, you guys are all intermediate technology people, which is why I've presented the harder edge of the alternative view to you. Not all answers, though, can easily be found in nice, happy compromises. Sometimes the middle ground is not the right way. Right, first on the IEA, IEC, and where we can go with the Hugh Pigott style stuff. I have for many years been begging and pleading to the people who are the leaders in the Hugh Pigott proponents to actually put their turbines through certification, to run the design rules on the turbines. Nobody's taken me up on the challenge yet.
That is happening.
I know, but it hasn't happened yet. When it's happened, and when the numbers are right, then we'll look at the numbers and we will know whether equally safe, equally strong designs can compete. But there is also a fundamental issue in a tail flapping design, whether that's safe. Local manufacture. I don't know what any of you do for a living, but let's say you work in the car industry in Birmingham, because it happens to be fairly local, right? How happy would you feel if a volunteer from China came over, set up a production line local to you, and volunteered to be on the line, and drove you out of business because they were working as a volunteer? You probably wouldn't feel very happy, would you? So every time that you all go out and volunteer somewhere else around the world, you're driving a manufacturer out of business somewhere else in the world often. Okay? Bear that in mind. There's always two sides to a coin. When you want to come and buy blades from us one day, the next day you'll want to come and buy a generator from us. And the next day you'll want to ask, oh, how would we match that blade to that generator? Once you've driven us out of business, you will have nobody to ask. You'll have nobody to do the research to the next generation of blade, the next generation of alternator, how to get the neodymium cost down by using less of it. You'll be very upset one day when the Chinese have managed to execute their grand strategic plan and not allow neodymium distribution out in the rest of the world, and they're the only people making wind turbines, and you've lost all of the skill sets, not only in Britain, but also in Africa. I'm actually a proponent of manufacturing things around the world. I think that the economic shipping radius of a small wind turbine is 1 continent. That's what my analysis is showing. Okay, I'm a numbers person, I'm driven by numbers. The economic shipping radius is probably one continent. What that indicates to me is that we should be looking at it this very same way as the motorcycle industry works and the car industry works. So the next time somebody wants to set up a manufacturing plant in Peru, the right way to do it is for the UN or whoever to run a tender. Which global small wind turbine manufacturer is prepared to set up a subsidiary manufacturing plant in Peru? And how little will they take as a fee to do it? Because I've looked at setting up hub and satellite type production around the world, and the biggest risk that I cannot control is the do-gooders coming in and doing a charity job next door and driving me out of business. I cannot take that investment risk. But I will drive the Peruvians out of business, or they will drive me out of business. Now, what I can't afford is that they drive me out of business and then they go under a year later because they can't sustain themselves. Because that will have lost all of the embedded knowledge. All right? I think that and the last thing, commercial motives. That is what has brought civilization to where it is people always trying to do better. I know there's a lot of compassion goes on. We give an awful lot in our company. All right? But at the end of the day, what keeps it going generation after generation is because people are trying to do better for themselves, in a sense. So the free market actually is the best mechanism we've come up with for organising ourselves.
There's a debate on that.
Well, I think we are talking of different markets, as we said. We still have nearly 1.5 billion people without electricity, and those with a lot of need and who will have electricity in very many years are those extremely poor who cannot, unfortunately, cannot pay the costs of products, of expensive products made in places like the UK or US or Japan. I mean, so I think these two extremes can survive. I mean, those doing the Hughes-Pigott model, as was said, can still survive and are still useful and affordable for many of those very poor people. And the others doing very good turbines in the other side, and they have their market and are selling thousands, as they said. So I don't see the risk of losing jobs or disappearing enterprise in the north, but would be good to have some in the south as well. So I think there's an important point here of compromise, and we still have to think about small is beautiful. The technology in the south is still developing, and we are still trying.
Okay, thanks very much. I'd like to draw it to a close there. I'd like to thank all the panellists for very interesting and straightforward contributions. I mean, that's what this festival is all about. It is all about trying to learn and understand and improve the kind of things that are going on. So I think I've certainly got a lot out of it. I'm sure the panellists would be happy to discuss over lunch further or give you further information. But thanks for your questions. Thanks for your attendance and interest, and if you could just give the panel a round of applause. Thank you very much.